Hello, everyone. It is Tuesday, August 12th. Man, we've got the CPI numbers are in. We're going to break down what those look like. We're also going to be talking about where I think the next major capital rotation is going to be. I touched on a little bit yesterday. I dove into a little bit more research. We're going to break that down. I do have a hard stop in about 15 minutes. I got a really important call I'm going to be hopping on. Super excited about that. But there's going to be some serious alpha packed in here. So make sure to like, share if you're on X. And I will also be streaming to YouTube. So whichever platform you prefer. If you don't follow me on both, though, make sure to definitely follow me on both. All right, let's talk about the inflation numbers, guys. CPI came in today. It came in at 2.7, which was, when we looked at the poly market odds, the expectation is a little bit lighter than what a lot of the analysts were saying. It does say that core goods prices are at their highest annual inflation rate in about 2 years. Evidence that the Trump administration tariff policy is feeding through to higher prices. We've been hearing this story for quite a while now. But the inflation numbers, the CPI numbers, continue to come in lower. If you remember earlier this year, after the tariffs were announced, everybody, Jerome Powell, all these economists were talking about how we're going to see this crazy inflation. It just hasn't happened yet. Will it happen? Well, we have to dig in a little bit. They are talking, though, about how there are worrying signs under the surface, including evidence that the Trump administration policies are stoking inflation for certain goods and services. They will likely be more pronounced later this year, according to this article, at least. But when you look at University of Michigan, they have a lot of economic reports and studies. When they looked at the year-ahead inflation expectations, it fell again, plunging from 5% last month to 4.5% this month, the lowest reading since February. And long-run, inflation expectations receded for the third consecutive month, falling back from 4% in June to 3.4% in July. So, guys, expectations across the board are that CPI is going to come in lower than what was originally anticipated. Obviously, that all bodes well for rate cuts because we're seeing that the job market revisions are showing a much weaker job market than what they told us. Big shocker there. We've only been talking about that for months. But when you look at the CPI index, I think this is really important. Shelter is in housing. Shelter is by far the most heavily weighted item, over a third of the CPI calculation. The problem with shelter is that it lags behind. When you look at what's happening right now, home price appreciation and rent hikes have been generally eased this year as the home sales market remains mired in a deep slump, and robust apartment construction has added new supply in many cities. When you look at the current trends, guys, on housing costs, they've dropped significantly. It takes a while for that to funnel through into the CPI, but that is the biggest part of the CPI calculation. And this is a service-driven market. Our economy is very service-driven. So a lot of the tariffs, while they will filter through in certain ways, it's not going to have as much of an impact as a lot of people had thought. And we're also finding that the countries are eating part of that cost. The importing companies are hitting, taking some of that cost. So not nearly as much as being passed on so far. Okay, so I think a lot of this concern over CPI and inflation being added is overblown, frankly. And this is what we saw in Trump's first presidency when we saw years later the final analysis on the 20% tariffs put on China. It added a 0.71% increase in inflation to consumers. So I think we're to see something similar here. And when you look at truflation, which is not what the government uses, obviously they use CPI, but truflation tends to be more real time on their data collection. And we're looking at 1.83%, which is below the 2% goal of the Fed, right? So again, CPI tends to lag. Okay, they use a lot of data points that lag behind and are not as real time. So I would expect, and many people are now expecting, that inflation is going to be not nearly as hot as what they anticipated, that what they've been telling us is going to be all year. Again, that bodes well for rate cuts. So that's all I have to say about that report. It looks more and more likely we're going to see rate cuts in September. Obviously, the next thing to really watch out for is going to be Jackson Hole. What does Jerome Powell say at Jackson Hole at that financial summit in about a week and a half, I believe, is when that is coming up. But that brings me to the next big alpha, the next big capital rotation. I think this is where things are headed, guys. I don't think it's any shock to anyone. Yes, we did get some good news on CPI, although some of the media sources are still saying, well, the inflation's coming. It's coming. It's coming. Been saying that for months. All right. So MicroStrategy. I just want to take a look at these treasury companies, what we've seen. MicroStrategy, obviously, the largest Bitcoin treasury. Obviously, the spot ETFs passed, and you see what happened to MicroStrategy's price over the last year, up 203%. We saw something similar now with Ethereum making its move. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Bitmine, the largest Ethereum treasury now, with 1.15 million Ethereum in their treasury. This is the one that Tom Lee joined. Well, what have they done? We've seen a similar move, guys, from June at $4 up to where it is today, about was that 14x? Okay. Follow the money, guys. Ethereum made its move. What's going to happen next? I think when you look at these treasury companies, and in particular, treasury companies that are adding assets that are going to be approved in these spot ETFs, I think that's what we need to be looking at. Solana is the next big one I have my eyes on, but here's a list, a comprehensive list of the applications. And there's 3 assets that I want to focus on. And one is Doge. There's a few of those that are likely going to get approved this year. The overwhelming favorite is Solana. Okay, so and then XRP. But look at how many Solana spot ETFs are applied for right now. So Solana is the overwhelming favorite here. You obviously have another Ethereum, but XRP, Solana, and Doge are the ones I'm looking at. So in particular, if we look at the top Solana treasury companies right now, you have this UpXE one as the top at 1.8 million Solana being held. It just so happens to be that Arthur Hayes just joined UpXE. Guys, what did we see again when the largest Ethereum treasury company added somebody notable like Tom Lee, who's all over the news, pumping his bags, pumping ETH? We saw it do a 15x in a matter of a month and a half. What do you think is going to happen when you have UpXE here? When you see Solana spot ETFs get approved, they're the largest treasury, and you see now Arthur Hayes all over the news pumping his Solana bags. Like, it's almost too obvious at this point. Now, what's happened with UpXE? We've seen it up. It's up, 61% over the last 6 months, but it hasn't made its big move yet. Okay, and I think this is one I'm absolutely adding bags to. Okay, I think it's going to make its move. The big question is, how soon is it going to happen? And I think it's well documented at this point. I think that the September FOMC meeting and the contraction in global M2 could lead to a bit of a pullback and consolidation for the next leg up. I'm still looking to add a bag here. And if we do see a pullback, I'll still have some powder on the sideline to fully ape in. But I believe UpXE is an obvious move with adding Arthur Hayes, with being the largest Solana treasury company, and with the Solana spot ETFs looking to get approved. Some of the other ones that were on that list, you've got this DeFi Development Corp. So they're the second largest at just under 1 million in their Solana treasury. And then the third one on that list is Sol Strategies. This one's down 61% over the last 6 months. So you have to look at what's happening with these spot ETFs and follow the money. Follow the money. And where are the moves being made right now? And there's a ton of spot ETFs, Solana spot ETFs that are going to be launched. And Arthur Hayes, okay, that guy is going to be all over the news soon, pumping Solana, guaranteed. Okay. when you look at what the expectation is, market watchers believe a decision on Solana spot ETFs could arrive as early as late August or September. So this could be happening soon. Binance is suppressing Sol price so they can be the number one better. Not surprising. Just follow what Wintermute does. The market makers are always suppressing prices. Binance is obviously always doing that too. All right, let's talk about XRP ones. We've got some in here. These are the largest, the ones to keep an eye on. This Trident Digital Tech Holdings. So they're sitting at 500 million. They're up 26% over the last 6 months. That's interesting. That's an interesting play, in my opinion. The other one, the Weebus, so that was 500 million. This one is 300 million. They haven't started buying XRP yet to add it, but that is in their plans. So down 44% over the last 6 months. Could this make a run if we see XRP spot ETF get launched? I bet so. I would imagine so. And then this other one, VVPR, up 633% over the last 6 months. I don't know if I'd buy into that chart, but they added 100 million. If we look at the likelihood of XRP spot ETF getting approved, they said analysts, including Bloomberg Intelligence's Eric, I don't want to butcher his name, Balchunas, but that's actually accurate, estimated 95% likelihood of approval, with some observers pushing the probability to as high as 98% by the end of this year. Okay, so keep an eye on the XRP. Treasuries, any big announcements, right? And then when we look to Dogecoin, this BitOrigin just raised $500 million to build their Doge stake as a treasury company. What are they doing? Well, they've been up just 10% over the last 6 months. But if you look a little bit further back here, it's done about a 3x. Okay, so not a massive move by any means. But we look at what Doge, they're talking about the sudden influx of capital has raised speculation about potential regulatory developments. The probability has increased from 56 to 74% in recent days. Okay, so Doge is likely to get a spot ETF launched. When you look at Polymarket odds, it's actually up to 76% now. So keep an eye on any Doge treasury companies. I think you can front run some of this stuff, guys. So we've seen, it is proven out what's happened with the Bitcoin spot ETFs. It's proven out what's happened with the Ethereum spot ETFs. And when you have overlap with treasury companies, you can buy the underlying asset, you can buy Doge, but what have we seen with Ethereum? Ethereum's pumped, but the treasury companies and the leading treasury companies have done far more multiples. So that Solana one that Arthur Hayes has joined is the one I'm really keeping an eye on, because we see when you have a talking head like that can be in the news, can be in the forefront, what can happen. So those are the plays, guys. And that is where I think the next capital rotation is likely going to go. Yesterday, I covered the DPIN trends on Google. I think DPIN is about to have its day too. We're already seeing some pretty big moves. Everything is just kind of pumping right now, guys. Things are looking pretty. I still think we could have a sell-off in September. I don't have a crystal ball. So I plan on, and I already have started building some cash on the sidelines in case we do see some sort of drop. But I'm still very, very much in the market right now because I think we could have a nice leg up here through August into September. But again, you have to be able to adapt. You have to take all the information that's out there in the markets and evaluate it. And you have to be able to adapt your strategy. So we'll continue doing that. And that's what I got for you guys today. I know it's a short show, but I have, like I said, another call I have to hop on, guys. I will be back tomorrow. So appreciate you all. I just had a great space with 375 AI. Go on my X page and check that out because it is worth a listen. We brought in the CEO, Harry Dewhurst. He had some serious alpha that he dropped in that space. So definitely check it out. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.